Yeah, it looks like we have 13 folks on. I think I'm going to go ahead and start. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Mary Ellen, and I'm with the Boerigter Center. And I'd also like to introduce Haley Wilson. She is going to join us today to tell her story of personal branding and work with you a little bit. She's a Hope grad from 2016 and is now with TikTok. So let me go ahead and advance so you can hear a little bit more about us. We're each going to give you a little bit of a background of our personal journeys with personal branding, and then we're going to get into the workshop itself. So I'll go ahead and start. And then I'll turn it over to Haley. So I was thinking about this and looking back a little bit and thinking, I've sort of been influenced by brands my whole life, right? So I grew up on Campbell's soup, which is good. Still eat Campbell's soup. Jif peanut butter is still in my cupboard. And back in the day, they used to say that Jif peanut butter was for choosy mothers. I grew up on Tide detergent, which I still buy. The slogan for Tide detergent back when my mom was buying it was Tide's in and dirt is out, or Tide's in, dirt's out. Um, let's see, another one for me when I looked back was thinking about running track and wanting Nikes so badly, especially for my cleats because all the fast runners had Nikes. And so I saved my babysitting money and I got myself some Nikes so I could just do it like the other fast runners. And then my tallest dream, I guess I would say, was I always wanted a BMW. I knew it was the ultimate driving machine, and someday I might get to own one. And so while that last one seemed a little bit lofty, I'm happy to say that I am lucky enough to be driving one today. And so if I look back at those brands, just a handful of brands that I've experienced in my life, I'd really I'd like to sort of reflect on the promises they made to me, whether it was through their slogans, which helped me to remember them, or it was through their performance, right? That they all continue to perform and deliver on what they promised over the years and years and years for all of those. So, how did those brands continue to keep their promise? Well, I'm imagining that in the kitchens and in the product development rooms of all those companies, the people were working really hard to keep the promise, right? Develop products that would meet needs as the needs evolved. So I don't even know what kind of shoes track stars wear today, what their cleats look like, but I know that Nike's probably a player in track shoes, and we know that it's become a lifestyle brand as well. So another sort of phase of my life as I reflected back on brands was making choices to go to college. And so when I thought about where I decided to go, Michigan State, sort of a long-standing Big Ten, go green kind of school that I had grown up hearing lots about. And I wanted to study engineering. And so I made my choice to go there because of the long-standing commitment to agriculture, certainly. It was one of the first land grant colleges in Michigan and had really great STEM programs. I then decided to go on to graduate school. And again, I kind of looked for brands. I looked at the top 10 rankings for MBA programs, and Indiana University was almost always in the top 10. And so I thought I'm going to try really hard to get in there. I also kind of wanted to go to Michigan, believe it or not, but I didn't get into Michigan because I didn't have any work experience. So I went straight through after my engineering degree and got my MBA in marketing at Indiana. And it was a great collaborative program. When I toured down there, they told me about the casework and how collaborative it was, and it was true. I had a great experience there. So kind of moving on into my next little group of brands in my life, I ended up getting a job in marketing in between my years at Indiana at the Ralston Purina company in St. Louis, and I worked on the Puppy Chow brand, which was a lot of fun. And you can imagine how important it was for people to feel like they could trust the promise that a puppy chow brand would make puppy chow for a full year until he's full grown. I won't sing the jingle, but that's what our tagline was back then. I then moved on to Quaker Oats, and I worked on the Gatorade business, Be Like Mike. If anybody has ever heard that slogan for Michael Jordan, I was there during that time. I worked on the Gerber baby food brand Next up in Michigan. And again, you know, moms and babies and baby food are the most precious of promises that you could imagine making. And so that was a really wonderful experience also. Herman Miller was my most recent brand before I joined Hope. And Herman Miller is all about a better world, which is again a pretty tall order to try to meet. But helping people work more comfortably and in a supported way at home. Also working with the environment, making sure products are sustainable, and they are great at community outreach. So one of the things that I was thinking about when I was reflecting on my Herman Miller experience was my interview. When I was interviewing to join the company, one of the senior folks asked me, "What is a brand?" And I was really afraid of what I was just stumped. And I finally started saying, you know what? A brand is just a promise. It's a promise of something that you make to somebody else to set their expectations, right? Like, I promise to be true to you. I promise to deliver quality goods. And so I got the job. So I'm hoping that that promise answer helped me get the job. And I was at Herman Miller for 10 years running the marketing team there. And one of the things that we started doing with our ad agency at Herman Miller was to try to figure out what the promises were going to be for, or the brand, you know, the brand statements for each of our product lines. And we had a little worksheet that we used. And I thought, after I left Herman Miller and came to Hope, you know, that worksheet that we used that had lots of inputs to it that we're going to talk about today could be used and applied to us as individuals as well. So that's what we're going to do today in a few minutes here, so that you guys can get involved a little bit with thinking about what goes into making a promise or a personal brand promise. So I am going to now turn it over to Haley and let you tell your story, please.
Thanks, Mary Ellen. It's nice to see all you guys here today. I know Mary Ellen noted this already, but it was not long ago that I was in all of your shoes. So I actually started at Hope in fall of 2012 and graduated in 2016 with a bachelor's in psychology. So my story is a little different just in terms of brands and like what that means to me. I want to give you just a little bit of a background in terms of like why I chose psychology and then like where that's taken me, because I think that some of you might be able to relate where sometimes you struggle to find that personal brand and what that even means, right? So whether that's as a student or maybe what you're going to do after college. So I actually started off at Hope intending to be a nursing major. I took a couple of semesters of nursing classes. I would like to say that I just changed my mind and decided, wasn't a fan of blood or all those things, but rather what happened was I couldn't get through Chem 101 or anatomy. So I was like, what this intention for me of like, I thought I knew what I wanted to do, wasn't 100% sure, but definitely was gearing that way. I just decided to more so focus on like what classes I felt like I could excel in, what really interested me. And so for me, that was the psychology courses. So, whether it was like the psychology of romantic relationships, I remember was one course, even research methods, which sounds kind of boring sometimes some people, or, IO psychology, which really opened my eyes, like what psychology could mean from a business perspective. So that's where, and I'll mention this here shortly, but that's where kind of it took off in terms of like how I've applied psychology in the workplace today. But when I think about Hope too, just as a place, I think about the brands on Hope. Like, I don't know if I'm outdating myself here, but like studying at JP's or Lamangelo's or even, the chapel on campus, I feel like all of those things really make Hope, they brand Hope itself as a college. So past that too, to kind of go back to where I ended up after college, again, graduated with a degree in psychology, wasn't exactly sure what I was going to do with it. I knew that I wanted to help people in some sort of sense, right? But not exactly sure how to apply that. So once I graduated, I moved back home to Chicago, babysat for the summer, didn't know what I wanted to do. And then I ended up accepting a job as a recruiter for a staffing agency downtown Chicago. I think that was kind of landed in that role. It was exciting because I got to work with one of my fellow Hope friends, worked there, ended up in staffing agency for 2 years. And then I got an opportunity to move to Austin, where I am now, to work for Google on contract. So that in itself, right? Google is a huge brand. So I kind of see that the company itself as a brand. And I got to hire software engineers to work at Google for those 2 years. It was super exciting just because it really is what you think of. I don't know if anyone's seen the internship, but the snacks and the nap rooms, like it really is what they say it is. And that was a great time. And then over the summer, this past June, I made the move to TikTok, where I'm working as a global recruiter right now. And so TikTok, of course, right now is another huge brand in itself that's really taking off. And so I kind of see brands in my life as the people that I get to work with on a daily basis and the people that I hire to work for these brands, and the people itself making the brands what they really are today. So that has been my perspective, a little bit different than Mary Ellen's, but that's how I kind of view brands in my work life and even personal life as well. All right, so next slide here. So we're going to go over today's agenda really briefly. We have a quick warm-up quiz. Then we're going to talk about what is a personal brand. Mary Ellen touched on it a little bit, but we'll go over the exercise. Then we'll show you our examples and how we create one. And then, of course, leave some time at the end for any questions that you all may have. All right, so to start off our quiz here, I'm sure you are all familiar with these two pictures. We kind of want to throw this out to you all here. And if you have any ideas on, what either of these two people represent or what you think their personal brands are, would love to take some suggestions from the audience. You can chat it, you can unmute yourself, shout it out, whatever is best. And this could be to you don't have to think of like a full sentence or anything, but even just words that when you look at these pictures, like what do these people represent to you?
If you don't recognize them, let us know.
Someone has something.
Mahomes kind of has the promise of despite what we saw on Sunday, of a really passionate performance and giving a good show of football.
Yeah, for sure.
Nice. Passionate performer.
Has this ability to relate to her audience. So she offers almost a community to her audience that she's going to produce music and performances that will make them be able to relate to her.
Good.
Yeah. John, I feel like you had a good phrase. What was it? How did you describe Mahomes?
I just said passion for the game and really going to put on a performance.
I kind of heard passionate performer.
Yeah. And how that applies to both of them in different ways.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you both. Yeah. So we were kind of looking at Taylor Swift and Patrick Mahomes as two people that just represent brands and who they are and what they do. And so I think you guys both touched on that really well. I think also you could say Taylor Swift is a singer-songwriter, creative artist. You could say Mahomes is an advocate humanitarian, as you see what he does off the field as well. That sportsmanship, class act. So great. Thank you guys.
I was just thinking, Haley, about what you said, that people make, if they work for a brand, that those people and their personal brands actually end up coloring the brand. So it's going to be so interesting to see how the Chiefs brand continues to evolve with his leadership.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, let's move along. The next slide is a little more academic, but I wanted to pull this out and share it with you just as another way to consider from Wikipedia. And so lots of people contribute to Wikipedia, as you know, and the way that they frame it from a definition standpoint is that personal branding is the conscious and intentional effort to create and influence your public perception. Okay, so you don't need to be a pop star or a professional football player to have a public perception. Anyone you interact with on a daily basis is your public. Okay, so why should you consider this conscious and intentional effort? Because it'll give you a chance to really position yourself as an authority or someone who's well known in your industry ultimately. It'll give you the opportunity to elevate your credibility and to truly differentiate yourself, especially as you're competing for jobs, right? I was just talking with an accounting student yesterday, and I know that they've got competition, even just at Hope, for internships, right? So how are they going to differentiate themselves as they move through the interview process? And then ultimately, if you think more broadly in terms of advancing your career once you're out of school, you'll have this opportunity to increase your circle of influence, meaning more people in your public will get to know who you really are. And if there's a need for someone with the promise that you make, they're going to think of you, right? They're going to say, oh, I need a passionate performer. Let's get Patrick to speak at this big fundraiser, right? And he's going to talk about more than performing on the field. He's going to talk about what he does to give back in his communities at the age of 25. Ultimately, then you're going to have a larger impact on the world if you can really hone this sort of who you are and the promise you make. All right, so let's move along and talk a little bit about how you might be able to do this yourself. So the first step that comes from that worksheet that I used with our ad agency for launching products is really a multi-perspective sort of reflection. So there are four perspectives that I would ask each of you to take. And we're going to do another little shout out / chat, whatever you want to do here. The first one is around transferable skills. Okay, so I want you to each think of a skill that you have that you might be able to take with you into multiple sort of times in your life. So one of my transferable skills is marketing, right? So I did marketing for baby food. I did marketing for furniture. I'm doing marketing right now, trying to market to you guys this idea of putting a promise forth in the world. So just, good solid marketing skills is one of mine. So I'm going to give you a chance. Haley, do you want to throw one of yours out there just to give them another example?
Yeah. I think of like my direct role and just like recruiting. I mean, that's my title, but that's also, the actual skill I have to do my job well. And I'll touch on a couple of those later too.
Yeah. So somebody, a few of you, give us some transferable skills. Like maybe you know how to code, for example. Give us
the code. Research. That's great. That's a skill that works in a lot of different jobs actually. So I love that.
Public speaking.
Public speaking, good one. Yeah. Boy, I sure didn't have that when I joined my first company on that Gatorade business. My boss made me go in the hotel room the night before our big sales meeting and present to her. Oh, was that ever scary? It was
Yeah.
more scary to present to her in a hotel room than it was standing in front of the sales team. But boy, she really got me to practice and imagine, visualize a positive outcome. And look at me now talking at all of you guys. Okay, just kidding. Okay, anything else popping up from anyone? Should we move along?
Would like leadership and communication with like peers in the workplace
Yes,
count as those skills?
both of those.
Definitely. Language learning as well was thrown out there for sure.
Okay. So if you're bilingual or
Yeah.
trilingual.
Yeah. I think like in my role too, it's like that's a transferable skill you write on your resume for sure that could make you stand out.
Okay, good. Thank you for getting involved here. Let's go to the next one. So this one's all about what have you heard from others in a positive sense, right? So what do your friends say to you that is flattering? What compliments have you heard from your supervisors at work? How does your family describe you? Go ahead and throw some ideas out here on this one first. I can tell you my mom says I'm what does she say? I'm little Mary Sunshine, which I'm like, Mom, is that like some really old book or something? And plus, I don't go by Mary, I go by Mary Ellen, but that's how she thinks of me, little Mary Sunshine, like I bring sunshine to the room or something, which is so, so, so sweet of her, right? And it's real. I mean, I know she's my mom, but it's real to her. So this one might feel a little bit uncomfortable because you feel like you're bragging or something, but it's what other people say.
Mm-hmm. Hey, Mary Ellen, can you see the chat or no?
No.
Okay, so if anything pops up, I'll just read it out loud.
Thank you.
You can also think of like feedback, maybe it's not for yourself, but feedback that you've given to friends or family or supervisors or professors. I know like I've given feedback of like, someone who's collaborative and someone said a good listen or a genuine listener. Absolutely. Get a lot of you should teach others, even though I'm not intending to be a teacher, Aiden says. That's good. Yeah. So someone says you're a good teacher. You might not intend to be, but maybe you have a way of like talking to a room. Confident is another one that was thrown out. Adaptable. These are great.
Good. Good. Thank you. All right, let's go on to the third one.
Yeah.
This one's easy because if you've all taken a StrengthsQuest survey, and by the way, if you haven't, let me know. I'll show you my email at the end. I will absolutely want you to take StrengthsQuest. Sometimes we have transfer students and so on, and you missed it. But what you'll get are your top 5 strengths out of a list of 34 that we all have, but the top 5 that seem to present themselves most often in your lives. So can anybody chat at least one of their strengths from their StrengthsQuest list? Or say it out loud.
Okay, I'm seeing a bunch here.
Good.
Competition, restorative, relator, includer, communication.
Great. Great. Okay, so you know what I'm talking about. If you don't, again, I'm sure you can come up with some strengths on your own, but that is, I think, maybe the best source for this exercise is to go back to that report. The last is values. What is most foundational for you? It could be your faith. It could be your family. Give me a couple of those. Haley, chime in if you'd like.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of what I have on mine. Yeah, I think it can be like I actually Googled this one because I think values can be like, I think it can be interpreted a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm.
You can think of like your values as a part of your family, like you said, your values as part of this country, your values as a student, all of those things. Everyone deserves a voice was thrown out there.
Nice,
Absolutely.
nice,
Having
nice.
a voice. Yeah. Respect for others. Totally.
Mm-hmm. I actually have another worksheet I could provide if anyone's interested. It lists, oh, I don't know, probably at least 100 values. And it's a sorting exercise where you prioritize them and you keep getting down, down, down to your top 3. And you have to pick one over the other, one over the other, one over the other until you get down to it. And it's a really illuminating, sort of thought-provoking exercise, because you're right, Haley, your values are going to show up differently at different stages of your life. However, I'll bet you there's something, at least one thing, that's always going to be in your top 2. So okay, so let's go ahead. This is the worksheet that if any of you have received in print or you've downloaded the workbook for the 30-day challenge, this template is in there. And so you will see, right, that there's transferable skills, feedback, strengths, and values, and you're going to fill in these little bubbles a few entries for each of the bubbles. Okay. Let's see, I can't remember. This is now to you, I think, Haley, right?
Yeah.
Okay,
So
go for it.
yeah, so then once you fill in all those 4 categories, then that second step would be to reflect and find themes from all 4 categories. You can make some notes just in terms of like, what are you seeing? Because I think sometimes there's overlap even in terms of like words, right? Like you can, respect can be a value, but people can also give that as feedback. You know, you're respectful. So thinking about what themes are really showing up. And then to fill in that middle circle, you want to construct a short and memorable personal brand promise. And that can be, like it's noted here, an adjective or a noun or even a sentence, whatever you feel like makes more sense for you, or the most sense. Yeah. So some examples, enthusiastic engager. It always sounds good with an alliteration. Tenacious teammate, dependable doer. And then, some sentence ideas. You can always count on me for ideas. I embody the golden rule. I strive to put others at ease. I think Taylor Swift said, music is my shining light. So those are things that you could make that middle brand promise. So back to me in terms of my brand promise and creating mine. So I took probably 30 minutes or so to really come up with all of these, and then to also think of that middle ground, right? So a lot of this does apply to my role in my professional role, but I think that also is transferable to just like me as a person. So starting up at the top here, for the transferable skills, again, recruiting, because that's something that's a skill I have to do my job. That's a skill I've gained, in the last 4.5 years. Didn't have that coming out of college. So I think that's something that's like notable, right? To maybe think about skills you want to have, not just skills you currently have. I also thought candidate engagement and process improvement are also skills that I've learned in my roles. So those things I think, are also just important to do your job well. So I think that's why those are my top 3 there. Moving over to the second side here. This is feedback I've gotten from coworkers, even from friends, honestly, too. So I think a lot of times I may not always have all the answers, or I may not always, know or do everything perfectly, but I think that I always do things with positive energy, right? So even if I make a mistake, or I, am having, an off day, I think I can always come to the table at least with like a positive spin on things. I think also just being dependable is really important. I think that especially in my role where I work a lot with teammates, I work with candidates, you really have to make sure that you're, showing up for your candidates, you're showing up for hiring managers, you're able to get the job done at the end of the day. And then collaborative as well, that kind of touches on that. I work with a lot of different stakeholders, where, you have to work with them in order to get a candidate hired. So you really have to work across the board. And it's not just about getting your job done, but it's about bringing everyone together to like complete a task or to get someone hired for a role. And then strengths here, I think this one, the StrengthsQuest, I think I've definitely taken that one. I think I've taken different versions of it, but there's also one that I've taken in the workplace called True Colors. I'd be happy to send that one out. I think there might be a free version of it, but I know there's like a paid version of it too, but basically it's a similar like strengths assessment, but instead of giving you like specific words, it gives you where you fall into in terms of the colors. So it's like orange, gold, blue, and green. And then it breaks down like you fall the most into blue or you fall the most into green. Again, I can send that over. But from those, I found myself in the blue and green categories and kind of combined some of those top things. So that's being empathetic, compassionate, intuitive. So that's how I came up with those. And then in terms of the last one, touching on values, I think that I came up with these things from my personal life more so, but also again, applying it back to the workplace, loyalty, whether that's to your friends or to your company, to your candidates, making sure you're doing right by them. Freedom, I think that applies today just in terms of like, being able to say what you feel, right? And whether that's to your friends, having your own opinions, whether that's in the workplace, being able to stand up for yourself and say like, this is what I want for myself. I'm not just going to follow the path that you may have carved out for me. I want to take control of my own career and I have the freedom to do so. And then integrity, just, also, when you do stand up for yourself, also being most honest in how you do that, being honest in feedback that you give others. I think that's really important as you become is someone that's a part of a big company, always making sure that you're giving feedback to others while they're giving it to you as well. So to come up with that personal brand for myself, I came up with an alliteration, also another H, since my name starts with an H. I like honest helper because I think that those are things that I've always felt like I've like back to being in hope and not knowing what I want to do. I always knew I wanted to help others. I didn't know how it would show up in the future. I would have no idea if you asked me 4 years ago that I would be recruiting at TikTok or even that I would have at Google. And I think that just having that like desire to help others in a way that is not necessarily, a teacher or a nurse or those things, I think that I was able to find that in the business world and in the jobs that I've held. And I think that kind of sums it up.
Anybody have any questions for Haley?
Yeah.
That was a lot of vulnerable sharing.
It's
Thank
okay
you.
if you don't now too, and you think of some later.
Yeah. Okay, I'll move on to mine. I was trying to stall. So I'll run through my bubble chart here so you can understand how I got through this process myself. I actually just redid this for this presentation. I hadn't done it in maybe 4 or 5 years. And so I thought when I pulled out my old one, you know what, there might be some changes. So marketing strategy, I talked about already. Career coach is something I never thought I had the skill to do. But having worked in the marketing industry for 25 years, guess what? I was coaching people all the time to help them develop their skills. And so that was a form of career coaching. I didn't know I was doing all that time from my from the students, or not the students, the people on my team. And so I've sort of parlayed that now into the Boerigter Center. And I would say I'm okay at it, right? Like I like to help people with their resumes and get jobs and coach them along. And this personal brand exercise is certainly part of that. Another sort of completely different skill that I have is I love to look at data and synthesize and figure out the so what's. And, what am I seeing in the data? What are the trends? What can I gather from the data? And I just love doing that. Number 2, energetic is something I heard from a survey we did when I was at Herman Miller. We were doing sort of a study of our team, and I think there were probably 50 people on the team, and we were trying to understand how we could all work better together. And somebody wrote that I bring energy to the room, and I have still not quite understood that. I think it's because one of my strengths is positivity, and I have an extroverted personality, so I think that's probably where my energy comes from. And then kind is a really, really nice thing to hear, because sometimes I feel like I overpower a little bit with my extroversion. And in fact, I think people that can kind of get to know me understand that I am a pretty giving person, and I am kind, even though I might come off as a little bit loud sometimes. Insightful, I think, ties back to data synthesis, right? I love finding insights, and I've had people say, "Wow, how did you figure that out?" And my brain, probably from my engineering degree, is fairly analytical, and I'm able to kind of move through a critical path and come up with some insights from a complicated sort of situation. In terms of my strengths, maximizer is number one, and that's all about taking situations and helping people go from good to great. That's kind of my easiest way to explain that one. Communication, pretty obvious. Activator is my third strength. I am always ready to act, ready to go. I may not have all the information I need, but I am ready to go. So if you need somebody that is going to help take action and get off of someplace that, everybody's stuck, I love to just, like, let's get moving and take a few steps and see what we can learn. And then number 4, my sort of foundational values. The older I've become, the more I've realized how absolutely critical my entire family is, and how much I respect them and care for them and need them, right? So whether it's my parents who are in their 80s or my kids in their 20s, my extended family, my husband, family is so foundational to me. And it's kind of one of those things where if you're faced with choices, I'm always going to choose family. And I will also say that during my working career, I really struggled to, sit there on the sidelines and watch my daughter play soccer, because I really wanted to be there, and put my BlackBerry away, right? But I've gotten better and better and better at that. Health has also continued to rise up on my list as I've gotten older, and making good choices around what I eat and staying active. And then serving others is really sort of, I think, could almost be in the center of my brand promise, because I think it really kind of does define me, and I sometimes don't serve myself enough. So I realize that that's okay most of the time. Like, I'd rather serve others. I don't know. So passionate advocate is what I chose, and I had, the last time I did this, passionate enabler. But I've learned in my 5 years at Hope, honestly, and working with students, that I sometimes could enable too much and, like, do it for them. And so I've been trying to train myself that, hey, I am here for you. I want to help you with that resume. I want to help you find that job, but I need to advocate for you more than enable you, right? Like, I need to point you in the direction. And I'm really good at that. I can send you, I can't tell you how many people I've shown new job platforms to search on, or ways to think about positioning their answers, or describing themselves in an interview. So how can I advocate for you so you can advocate for yourself? Okay. All right. I'll throw it out there too. Anybody have any questions for me? If you don't right now, that's fine too.
I like that change from enabler to advocate.
Thank you. Okay, sounds like we want to move along. I think I'm going to continue here, aren't I? All right. So I hope you guys have made a few notes along the way here today in some of these 4 categories, just to start thinking about how you might craft a brand promise. You'll find the template, as I said, in the workbook. Spend a little bit of time gathering inputs from others if you are struggling. Haley's been out of school for almost 5 years, so I think doing it in a half an hour was easier for you, right? I think it might take you a little longer as a student. You got to dig out your StrengthsQuest report. You got to maybe ask your friends, hey, how would you describe me? Which is a pretty sensitive, intimate sort of conversation. But if you do it for each other, that's usually what I do when I've do this in a workshop setting in real life, in the real room, hey, everybody give each other feedback. And it's so lovely to see people give each other compliments, right? So do that with your housemates. Spend some time. And if you don't finish this in one sitting, put it aside and come back to it, right? Once you do sort of put it all on paper, share those inputs, just the 1, 2, 3, 4 bubbles with somebody, get a little bit of input, see if they might choose different words, see if you're missing something, and then sit down and really try to write your promise. Either do an alliterative thing like passionate performer, or a little sentence. I think if you write a long sentence, you will never remember it. Okay. So I'm going to call Haley in 6 months and I'm going to say, Haley, do you remember your brand promise? And I really, really hope she says honest helper really fast. Do you think you will? You think you'll remember it?
So I think so. The H makes it easy.
Yeah. Cool. And then honestly, it's about trying it out. Put it in the back of your mind, the front of your mind, and revise it, right? You're going to keep revising as you learn and as you grow. So let me give you one more reminder, and then we can give you our contact information and answer any other questions or have a little conversation. Ultimately, you are trying to advance, I don't even know what that word says back there. Advance your career, increase your circle of influence, but to have a larger impact on the world, right? That's what we're all about at Hope, right? We are here to help each other grow and develop and be sensitive to each other and listen and share. And I could go on and on about that, but this is like, I think for me, joining Hope, I've grown, right? And I've learned that I am having an impact on the world in a different way than I ever expected, right? I never expected to go, I was going to be an engineer, right? And then I decided that wasn't for me. Marketing and now into higher ed. That journey was not sort of planned out at the beginning, but I feel like being able to talk with all of you today, and if you share this concept with your friends, I feel like I am serving others. Haley, anything else you want to add here before I just kind of wrap with the last slide?
Yeah, no, that's great. I think that personally, I never really thought about my personal brand promise. So thinking about that is, I think, just like it's kind of like it's a good exercise to do. And it makes you really think about what you want to put out in the world, but also what you already do. And so I think that it's a cool exercise for everyone to try.
Thank you. Okay, so here are our email addresses. I'm also throwing out our social media handles in case you're not following the Boerigter Center. But let me pause and see if anybody has like a question they want to put on chat or that they want to talk about, because we are here for another, 5 minutes or so.
Yeah. Okay. I have a question I can throw out. Thanks, Aiden. There were 3 activities questionnaires mentioned. Would you be willing to send them to me? Also, hold on. I don't know where it went here. Also, what defined the transition between college and your first job? Also, a side note, John wants to know where I can get a physical copy of the workbook.
Oh, okay. Send me an email, John. I'll get you one.
Okay, but back to the 3 activities questionnaires. Aiden, is that referring to when we were talking about like the skills assessments?
Yeah, so it was the strengths, the 3, I believe it was the 3 values, or the value
the values list.
thing.
Okay.
Yes. And then the third one was the color one that I believe you mentioned. Yeah. Those 3 are really interesting, and I'd like to get those.
Great.
Yeah, and I can send that. Marianne, have you heard of that one?
I have, but I haven't done it.
Yeah, we actually did that at Google. It's like a team bonding experience or team building activity too. So, and everyone kind of talked about like people falling in the different colors because there's only 4. So, having and realizing on a team too, you need a little bit of every color. And so that was cool. So I can definitely find resources for that, send that over. And then Aiden, in terms of the transition between college and my first job, was that a question you were asking?
Yeah, yeah. Basically, like this is my last semester at Hope College, and so like that idea of like transitioning between college to the workspace, what that felt like for you,
Yeah.
in any way.
Yeah. No, that's a great question. Well, first of all, congrats on making it through to your senior year.
Thank you.
I remember thinking like, oh my gosh, like, am I going to make it there? And also given this year too. So congrats on almost graduating. But I would say honestly, like, I remember the feeling of a lot of people like being like interviewing, whether it was like their first semester, second semester of senior year, and being really overwhelmed by that, because I was like, I'm just trying to like, finish my schooling and then really think about it. So for me, honestly, I took the summer just to like, I nannied, really put my, resume out there, and I didn't actually get a job until September of 2016. And so I think some people are like, really anxious about that and want to get going right away. You want to start working, you want to make money, of course. But I'm kind of grateful for that like transition phase where I got to just like have a summer, because we don't have summers off anymore, at least in my career. So I think the key is to just not stress. I think, really working on your resume, deciding what thinking about what you've done in your 4 years, what volunteering, what, if you've had a job or multiple jobs. I think really just honing in on like working through that resume and realizing that if your friends get jobs before you, that's okay too.
Aiden,
Hope
I
that
can give you
helps.
a quick rundown on my graduation. So my senior year, my 5th year at Michigan State, civil engineering, I'm interviewing, and I'm like thinking this sounds absolutely horrible to go and stand at a wastewater treatment plant and take samples. What have I done to myself? And so I started talking to my dad, and he's like, well, I've been reading this article. Maybe you should get your MBA. I'm like, what? So I applied for loans. I decided I am going to go to grad school because this whole engineering thing was really challenging. I got through it. I was smart enough, whatever, but the jobs just were not for me. So I have started applying then my senior year, and I switched over from interviewing to grad school applications. And
Wow.
then in the summer, I was really nervous because I had never taken any business classes. So I took Excel, which was a long time ago. And then I took an accounting class at a local university just to get myself in, like, it just felt better to like have seen some business stuff. And then I ended up choosing Indiana. So I also kind of had a transition summer.
Good for you. I was like, I'm done with school. I was like, I cannot study anymore.
Yeah, the MBA was a way easier than the engineering degree, I can tell you that. But I will also say I wasn't a great contributor in my MBA classes because I hadn't worked. So if I had worked, and I mean, I worked on my summer's engineering jobs, but that didn't really apply to the casework that we were doing. So I think working before grad school is actually kind of a good idea, but you can do it lots of ways. Who else has a question or a thought?
Yeah, I appreciate the feedback. Aiden said it's hard to put things into perspective when you've never personally experienced a transition out of schooling. Yeah, I remember that feeling like it was yesterday, but also like it was like 5 years ago, which I guess it was. Yeah, so I remember being so overwhelmed, and I think I can just be a voice in the sense of I seriously had no idea what I wanted to do, and it works out. And so I think you just have to trust that. My sister was actually a Hope grad in 2017, and she wanted to be a teacher. She wanted to be a teacher since she was probably as little as she can remember. And she got her teaching degree, graduated, got a really good teaching job, and has been a kindergarten teacher at that school district for the last, 3.5 years. And I was always envious of that because I'm like, she always knew what she wanted to do. And I never had that. But, it was carved out for me a little bit differently. So I'm appreciative of that too. And she's still at home and I'm not. So
All right. Well, thank you everyone so much for your time today. Next week's workshops are on interviewing tips and working further with your networking platforms like Hope Connection and LinkedIn, etc. So hopefully you'll be able to sign up for those, and we'll definitely be looking for any emails from anybody with more thoughts, questions, and hope you guys have a great week. Thanks,
Yeah,
Haley.
thanks everyone.
Thank you.